Temple of Mungk is a concept album. It tells the story of a Buddhist monk from eastern China who begins to question the nature of his beliefs and his faith, and eventually decides that he has to embark on a journey to discover how other people live their lives and to find out what conclusions others have come to about the great mysteries of life. The journey is represented through the sounds and instrumentation used throughout the album. From China he goes through India and into the Middle East before entering Egypt and then travelling down the entire length of Africa right down to South Africa. He then crosses the Indian Ocean to make it back home to Asia near the end of the album. The track order makes sense in terms of geographical location, and that you should hopefully be able to track his journey by the sounds used in each track, and it should make sense by looking at a map. I've mainly done this by sampling traditional instruments that are specific to the regions that he passes through. I've also taken the time to find field recordings of just general ambience and sounds that were actually recorded in those areas as well. These are featured in all the quieter sections between tracks, and I think I kept them playing the whole way through a couple of them as well. People have described my music to me as cinematic before, and I really like that. I think it's particularly important for me when making instrumental music that the music can take the listener somewhere, and it should conjure up imagery of some kind, and hopefully they can close their eyes, like they as in the listener can close their eyes and be immersed in wherever that piece of music is taking them to. Hopefully in the case of this album, that's the jungles and deserts and mountains of Asia and Africa. As well as the music itself, the track titles are also clues to where you are in the story. Most of them are named after things that are specific either to the location itself or to the mythology and beliefs of that area. For example, Yaksha is named after these shape-shifting nature spirits from Hindu mythology. Or another one I thought was quite cool was the Inkanyamba, which is a legendary giant serpent creature from South African folklore. The album definitely centres around spiritual themes though. I kind of prefer to think of it as philosophy in a way. I find philosophy and mythology and the relationship between these two things really interesting, and it's really cool to look at how these have a role in forming the beliefs of different cultures around the world. I find the concept of God a hard one to grasp, and I definitely don't subscribe to any particular religion. I don't think I ever could, but I will listen to the teachings from just about any of them as much as I would with science. I don't have to agree with everything they say, but the process of understanding why someone else believes that helps me to learn and grow as a human being. I think there is a lot to learn from religion that science could never teach us. It took me a long time to work that out, but I think sometimes you really have to take a step back and realise how little you actually know, which is not always easy to do, but it's something that I had to do. I first got sober in the summer of 2017, and it was honestly the hardest thing I've ever done. Before that, I had spent the best part of a couple of years with a substance abuse issue where I was doing various drugs nearly every single day. This was definitely a coping mechanism that I'd developed to deal with anxiety and depression that I'd been struggling with from a really early age, but funnily enough, you mix drugs with mental health issues and things tend to spiral out of control. I think it was through this experience, though, that I realised not everything could be explained with only science. You go through what I just call the system to try and find help for your mental health problems, and there's an awful lot of just ticking boxes that happens. You're forced to summarise ridiculously complicated thoughts and emotions that may vary on a day-to-day basis in a singular yes or no scenario question. The help and the drugs that you're then handed are based on scores and data that you never really feel accurately reflects how you are on the inside, but you're told it's how you should be feeling because that's what science and textbooks and data are saying. Obviously this data is based on research, so there is some likeliness that maybe it's how you feel, but everyone is an individual and you can never guarantee that one person thinks the same way the next does. I think experiencing life as a human being is far more complicated than anything that can be summarised with science, numbers or data. So this is probably where I started to pay a bit more attention to other concepts and ideas, and then to get completely sober, you of course really have to admit to yourself that you're doing it wrong. Life, that is. You've obviously not got everything sussed or you'd be in a much better place, so I feel like I did a lot of learning over that time, and I really do feel like I've come out the other end of it all a much better person for it. So that was my kind of personal journey that I've been through, and I suppose that is loosely the inspiration for the album's concept, because this is also what the monk in the story is doing, just in a far more colourful and exciting way. He's questioning his beliefs and what he thinks he knows in order to better himself and gain a clearer understanding of the world around him. So going back some years, I used to be really into punk rock music and got quite involved with that scene where there was a lot of anarchism and activism going on. I still fully back all of that. The system is obviously a mess, and it's good that people fight back, but I guess I'm just less angry these days. The thing I came to realise is that, a Shaolin monk who can find complete satisfaction in meditating, which is literally the art of doing nothing, is just about as anti-establishment as you can get. As I'm sure we all know by now, we live in this capitalist system where there is money to be made from people's insecurities and addictions. It doesn't benefit governments or large-scale corporations if everyone is content with themselves and their lives. You're always supposed to be wanting something else that is supposedly going to be the next thing to improve your life in some way, and there's always going to be someone there to sell it to you and to make profit off of that. So the thing that I think is, like, what's more punk rock than achieving full contentment and happiness from simply sitting and thinking? There isn't a suit out there that's going to be able to sell a thing to a Shaolin monk. But anyway, that all sounds quite deep, but most of the time when I'm making tunes, there isn't any real concept there. It's just experimenting with sound because it's fun and I enjoy doing it. However, when Deplock approached me about doing a full-length album, I really wanted to take the opportunity to create something different and well thought out. It was an opportunity to create a real piece of art, so I didn't really want it to just be another random collection of tunes like a lot of releases tend to be. Not that they're always random, but it's always a process of sending a big pack of tunes over and then negotiating which ones both you and the label like and which ones you think work well together for a release. I really wanted this album to be a cohesive listening experience that flows from beginning to end, so I was very fortunate that Deplock approved the whole thing, on the first go as well. What you hear when you listen to the album is the full story exactly as I wanted to tell it, with no edits or compromises. I actually remember where I was at the time I got the email from Deplock. I'd just finished a lecture at my uni and I decided to check my emails before heading home. We'd already been going back and forth for a while as the Coogee EP release had already been signed at that point. And he said he was starting up this new series to put out full-length albums from artists in the dubstep scene and asked if I wanted to get involved, and honestly I couldn't believe my luck, and to be honest I still can't. The whole project has been such an immense opportunity for me as an artist, not only creatively but the whole process of marketing and releasing a full-length album as well has really been eye-opening. I feel like I've learned a lot over the course of the last year in terms of music industry stuff and promoting myself as well. It's funny because I really had no intention of making a full-length album yet. I didn't think I was ready at all, but I couldn't refuse the opportunity to have it done properly in the way that it has been done. In my head I'd have probably waited another year at least and then just self-released an album on my Bandcamp or something, which obviously seems a lot less exciting to say now. I really can't thank Deplock enough, as they gave me full creative control over everything in this project. I picked all the artists we worked with for the vinyl and the music video as well. I think the only thing I didn't pick was Deplock had the guy for the album visualizer, but I had no problem with that decision. The guy, Joshua is his name, he does art for Deep Medi and Bandulu, so it's just really cool to even be put in contact with these people, let alone collaborate with them. I think with bass music and any kind of dance music in general, we're often making tunes for the dance or the rave specifically. This project allowed me to move away from that and try to create something more like what I would just listen to at home in my free time, or while I'm just chilling. Not that there aren't any bangers for DJ sets in there, but that definitely wasn't the focus, and this also allowed me to experiment with the boundaries of the genre a bit more as well. Originally it was going to be a multi-genre project, and I was going to experiment with how my sound could translate to various other tempos, but I just found I wasn't enjoying the process as much. I listened to all sorts of music in my free time regardless of BPM, but 140 just always feels like home when it comes to actually making the music. I occasionally make other bits here and there, but sometimes they're good, but it just never seems to stick. It's weird because you think it's such a tiny detail, but it seems to make all the difference when you're crafting beats. I think pushing myself out of my comfort zone could definitely be a productive thing to do at some point though. Maybe I'll do that for the next one, but yeah, I ended up making the entire album at 140 BPM. Even all the ambient interludes are 140 as well. The ambient bits were actually probably my favourite to make in the creative process, to be honest. It was so much fun to just experiment with sound in that way without worrying about how musical it was or how it would fit into a song structure. If you make music and you haven't ever had a go at making ambient, I fully recommend it. It's the most free and creative process I've come across since I started making music. Other than the ambient parts though, it is all dubstep really, but just not necessarily in the traditional sense. I like to think I've fit a lot of nods to other genres in there too. Like Zither definitely has more of a grime feel. Sekhmet, I made that when I was listening to a lot of techno, so you've got the fall to the floor drum pattern in there and a lot of modulation going on. I'd say it's all very hip hop influenced as well, because I love that approach of taking a sample and just seeing how many different ways you can slice it up and mess with it over the course of a track. I always seem to enjoy that process more than the synthesis side of things. I think it could be that I've come into it from a background in live music, so I'm still really drawn to real world instrumentation and the more organic sounds. I tend to not like anything that sounds too robotic, if that makes sense, but it's the way that you can blend those two worlds, the live sounds and the electronic, that's what really interests me. This album is different from anything I've put out before because I've really tried to pour as much of myself into it as possible. I've played a lot of my own instruments on the tracks, so you'll hear like little guitar riffs popping off from time to time. I guess Sha Sha is the track where this is most obvious, as other than the programmed drums, I'm playing everything live on that one. There's a couple of guitars, bass guitar and melodica. Not just instruments specifically, but I've also tried to include sounds from lots of objects and trinkets that just mean something to me in there too. There's also little bits of audio from film and music and various other media that's hidden amongst the tracks. Just all various bits of art that's inspired me over time that I feel like's all led to me creating this. But yeah, I wanted this project to be a true reflection of who I am and to really mean something to me, I guess. As to warrant putting out a full-length album, I really needed to feel like it was my greatest artistic accomplishment to date, which it truly is, because I've never been more proud of anything I've created in my life.